Leaks of new phones are the bread and butter of our coverage in the months before a new device launches. Before it's announced on stage by whichever executive and given the official hands-on treatment, a lot of people need to see and use pre-release smartphones, whether at the manufacturer itself or the carriers or sometimes even journalists. And despite all the secrecy and the non-disclosure agreements, when there's a lot of interest in a shiny new toy, people inevitably talk and stuff inevitably leaks out. But the most tantalizing leaks are the ones where you can actually see the new phone. Often the quality is blurry or grainy, but you get just enough to be able to piece together the story of a new handset before you're supposed to know anything about it. In fact, the huge interest in leaks sometimes leads companies to intentionally leak their own stuff, either to drum up hype or to test the waters with certain new features. But most of the time, leaks are something that a phone manufacturer will fight tooth and nail to prevent, and they have several clever ways of doing so. So let's back up a sec. What does any of this have to do with the OnePlus 9? Well, a recent leak around Christmas laid bare just how some phone manufacturers can keep tabs on the leakers. And when the leaker in question isn't exactly smart, then it makes tracking them down all the easier. So shortly before the holidays, someone tried to sell their OnePlus 9 prototype unit on eBay for $3,000. The listing was later pulled but popped back up a couple of days later and sold, this time for a cool $6,000. And this is pretty dumb for a good long list of reasons. Firstly, if you're dealing with eBay, PayPal, any legitimate online sales platform, it's not really possible to remain 100% anonymous. But regardless of any of that, check out this photo from the listing and more importantly this number down here. This is one of the many ways phone manufacturers try to stop anyone from leaking photos of pre-released devices. This is likely the serial number or some other unique identifier that's there permanently, shown on top of all apps on the screen to track potential leaks back to the source. So to begin with, it's pretty bold to leak photos of a future phone online. It's even more brazen to try and sell it when, let's face it, unless the eBay seller here is Pete Lau himself, this OnePlus 9 is not his to sell. But it's just plain stupid to show photos in the eBay listing itself of this ID code, which is just going to be traced directly back to you. Effectively, what this seller is doing here is offloading stolen property, and he's done it in a way that makes it super easy for him personally to be traced. That means whoever sold this pre-production unit is likely going to have a lot more coming their way than just a one-off $6,000 payday. It's a classic case of security measures put in place to foil leakers doing exactly that, and foiling this particular leaker pretty hard. I could point out other things here, like how in one picture you can see part of his face and the phone he uses, a Samsung Galaxy Note 9, and the T-Mobile 5G logo in the status bar likely revealing his employer, given that this was a US eBay auction. So yeah, there's more than enough evidence here for OnePlus or T-Mo or whoever to track this guy down. Our culprit here obviously isn't well schooled in the history of smartphone leaks. If he were, he'd know about the multitude of tricks that manufacturers use to either stop leaks entirely, or alternatively, nail whoever is responsible for them. You can see another different example of one of these measures in this OnePlus 9 leak. In order to throw off casual observers, this device doesn't use any OnePlus branding, and instead there's this placeholder logo on the glass back panel. The idea is if you see this out in the wild, you're less likely to try and snap a photo of a no-name handset as opposed to something new looking with a familiar brand name on the rear. A lot of other companies do this, whether it's Google with this weird alien alphabet on the back of this leaked Pixel 3a, or this pre-release Huawei Watch 2, which commits so much to fake branding that on the back, instead of Huawei, it's branded as the studiously Studio Company Limited Meow Meow 3. And there's another really recent example from Huawei that we can point to, the upcoming Huawei P50, leaked here with a ton of camera modules on the back and branded as G-Sins. Of course, Huawei also fakes out the Leica camera branding on this device too, so instead this prototype just says, "Let it go." The next most extreme thing you can do is completely hide the design of a new phone, so even if a leaker knows it's new, there's not an awful lot they can do to show it off. The earliest and certainly most notorious example of this dates back to the infamous iPhone 4 leak of 2010. When the unannounced iPhone was lost in a Californian bar, it was concealed in this case, which was designed to make it look like a less conspicuous iPhone 3GS. Of course, that didn't stop Gizmodo back in the day from cracking it open and revealing details of the new iPhone inside. Many Android manufacturers have used these cases too, which in the business are usually called lunchboxes, because they're big and chunky and plastic and generally just not very attractive. Generally, the idea is to lock the phone in there and to hide almost all aspects of its design, while also making it very difficult to crack open. There aren't all that many photos of lunchboxes out in the wild, but I did get a look at one in person when I visited LG in South Korea a couple of years back to take a look at the G7 at the time. Anytime these pre-production G7 phones were used out in the wild, they had to be put in these chintzy 3D printed cases, which actually took a screwdriver and a lot of effort to open back up later. So leaks are a fact of life in the phone business. If you're a leaker who gets your hands on something you want to share online, the basic due diligence is to hide any identifying marks and serial numbers or barcodes, and if you're leaking a Samsung phone, to ignore the very polite warning on the back that tells you, do not leak info. In the case of this most recent OnePlus 9 leak, it doesn't tell us a whole lot more that we didn't already know. Expect a Snapdragon 888, dual cameras, but likely no dedicated telephoto, wireless charging, and of course Oxygen OS 11. And while the mystery of whether this $6,000 transaction actually went ahead remains unsolved for the time being, we do know almost certainly that OnePlus has itself probably identified the guy who at least tried to part with the prototype OnePlus 9 in exchange for a rather fat stack of cash. That's it for now. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our Galaxy S21 coverage coming soon. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.